Greetings, everyone. This is Dale Parrish, COS Today host. I got Ken Kashuba with me, my co-host. Can you hear me, Ken?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. I'm sorry, folks. We were having some technical issues there right at the last minute before our broadcast started, and of course, it's all Ken's fault. But I wasn't going to say that. But anyway.
It's called it's called program rearrangement at 2 minutes before broadcast.
Yes, it is. Uh, that doesn't happen to us very often, but when it does, it's very, very, how should I say,
Unsettling.
disconcerting. Yes. Well, listen, we want to introduce you something that a new thing that we want you as viewers to please do, and we're gonna Maringo Mike's gonna tell you about it now. Uh, his volume is not good on my end here. Maybe on the broadcast it might be better, but so turn your volume up a little bit. It's very short, and this is something that we want to make sure that you're doing for us now. So, Ken, I'm going to play that right now. Let's see what it says.
Rango Mike here, asking you to hit that like, subscribe, and especially that notification bell so you'll be reminded every time we go live. We really do appreciate your support. Now, back to our program.
Yeah, I'll have to get Marengo to turn up his mic and resend that to us.
Okay, all right. That's the first time, folks, that we've utilized that. But I don't know, Ken. You think we ought to maybe play that more than just once, maybe a couple times during the broadcast, or what do you think about that?
No, I think if people maybe once in the beginning and once at the end, just for those that tune in early and those that tune in late.
Okay.
Yeah.
The main point, obviously, here is we want you to hit that notification, press the subscribe button, the notification bell, and so that you can follow us. So that's why we're doing this. So we appreciate it if you will please do, and look forward to seeing you. Well, Ken, I did a little bit on our roundtable not too long ago about our military being reinstated, or the rebuilding of our military. So I recorded it, and I thought I'd go ahead and play that for us. Our military, there's a lot going on with our military right now, wouldn't you say, in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
My,
I think as part of the latest news too, I think from what seems to be stirring up is the fact that maybe the governor might be put under arrest, according to
yes.
the government's wishes. So this, I mean, yeah, we've got some interesting things to keep our eye on.
Yeah, and I guess they've ordered some Marines in, so that'll be interesting. That'll be interesting too. So, my guess is, I don't know what's going to become of this, but my guess is this riot's not going to last very long. Not as long as people would like to see it happen.
No,
So,
I think the days of letting it burn itself out are over.
yeah.
You know, at this point, it's the law of the land. So I think, people got to get over this fact that, calling something a peaceful protest in these forms is ludicrous and very evident when you watch it.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at this recording that I did on the reinstatement of our military. All right.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Let's talk about what's happening in our military since Trump took over. If you recall, there's a movement underway in our military to correct justice for discharged service members. During the Biden administration, there were approximately 8,000 service members let go because they refused to take the vaccine, the COVID vaccine. Now, most of those objected based on religious or personal grounds. So the Trump administration has taken action to correct that and to offer these people a way to come back. Now, the individuals that were discharged, a breakdown of that is that in the Army, about 3,400 had been discharged. In the Navy, 1,600, Air Force 2,000, Marine Corps 2,000. Those are certainly approximate numbers, but that amounts to the estimated 8,000 that were let go. Now, what's the Trump administration doing about this? Well, on January 27th, Trump signed an executive order taking action and offering to restore service members that were discharged strictly for vaccine refusal. And this would include full back pay and benefits and reinstatement of previous rank and pay grade. So it was a pretty attractive offer, okay? And this is going to be in effect for some time. Now, this applies to both active duty individuals as well as reserve personnel. That's very important. And voluntary separations must provide sworn attestation. Now, that means sworn proof that they were discharged for that reason. And that, as we mentioned, voluntary returnees are not entitled to back pay. So this is strictly for those that were discharged due to the vaccine situation. Now, unfortunately, or I should say disappointingly, the numbers have not been very impressive so far. Now, I'm sure these numbers have been upgraded. I think these are probably of about April of this year, but only 73 have been reinstated from the Army, only 25 from the Marine Corps, and as you can see, 13 from the Air Force and only 2 from the Navy. Now, evidently, according to my research, there have been a number of personnel that have expressed interest in coming back, but haven't made that decision yet. Now, as of the date of this presentation, these numbers may be better, but as of about April, these were the numbers that we had available to us. So not too impressive. Now, this offer, I will say, is valid until April 1 of 2026. So we got a whole year to go on this, okay? And the military is out doing an outreach effort to these individuals to see if they're interested in coming back. Yes, there's the potential of hundreds more to return, but that remains to be seen. So that's kind of where we stand on this right now. So I hope this gives you a little bit of an update as to where we are on this, and let's hope that more, if it seems feasible to them, obviously, more will take advantage of this. As we know, there's a lot going on in our military. There was a ship renamed here very recently, and the volunteer numbers are all going up. So let's hope that there'll be more of these individuals that want to take advantage of this offer. So just wanted to give you an update on that. Thank you very much. Okay.
A lot happening.
Yep, a lot happening, and obviously, like we were talking, there's more happening now just since I made that recording. So,
yeah, we had one comment while that was all playing. Dale, I'll go ahead and show that. Charles says, "Good start arresting these idiots." So I think there's a lot of people that would agree with that sentiment. Charles, thank you.
I believe this is. I think this is one of those 80-20 things.
I believe so too. Yeah, 80-20. I think a majority of the country probably sees this as just, it's about time.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Well, Ken, you remember our last broadcast prior, uh, well, our last broadcast, yeah, the last broadcast that we did. Um, we presented two parts of a very interesting interview that we did with a gentleman from Ohio called Michael Mercier. Mercier, I believe it's the way it's
Mercier, I think it is. Yeah,
Mercier. Mercier. I always
it's French. The name sounds French to me, Dale.
does it. Okay, Mercier. I always have trouble pronouncing his name, so pardon me, Michael, on that. Um, but this is part three, and uh, one of the big takeaways that I recall from parts 1 and 2 is the way the media and his research and his conclusions. The media has always developed a narrative on a particular incident based on their political beliefs, and then developed the facts to support that narrative. When it really ought to be the other way around. You first develop the facts, and then you develop the narrative based on those facts. So anyway, Michael, in this last part, uh, is going to explain this a little bit more, and I think he does an excellent job on it. As a matter of fact, I'll just tell everyone I've been having some other conversations with Michael, and we are going to bring him back. We're working on another episode in this particular topic. Um, he's been working on this for over 30 years, so he's really knowledgeable about media bias. So let's get right to that, Ken, and we'll then be back with you all very soon. Very soon. Well, welcome back, everyone. We're back with Michael again. We're into a very, very interesting conversation here on the polarization of our media, and Michael's just been great. So, Michael, we left it off. We were talking about another Obama quote here that you had mentioned. All right.
Right. So the point I want to make here is we've established so far that we've been placed, the liberal and conservative news media has polarized the public by distorting facts and creating sort of limited targeted narratives. And this really places us in different realities. And this is what's dividing us. This is what's polarizing society. So we have people who watch CNN get a totally different view of reality than people who watch Fox or, read the Wall Street Journal versus the New York Times. And it's intentional, right? But I found this Obama quote and I wanted to use it in this talk because he's saying the exact same thing I just said. He said, we live in such a polarized time. If you watch Fox News, you're in one reality. And if you read the New York Times, you're in a different reality. And if you're at BuzzFeed, you're someplace else. It's been challenging to have a common conversation. Exactly the point, right? So my reaction to Obama's quote is, number one, you're absolutely right, and it's intentional. That's the key point.
All right.
It's intentional. There's no accident here. Okay. But on the final sentence there, it's been challenging to have a common conversation, i.e., we're polarized. We can't have a dialogue. That's my point here. Okay. The ultimate point here is we can't have a conversation, an adult, mature, problem-solving conversation about the issues we face as a nation, because we're stuck debating the facts. If you want to solve a problem, you have to have a common view of what are the basic facts, right? It shouldn't be that complicated, right? This is what happened. These are the things that we know happened. We can't progress in our dialogue beyond debating the facts. Everything breaks down because we argue about the facts. And if you want to go to the next one, if you go to the pyramid.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is a slide I created. I call this the anatomy of a policy debate, right? So policy debate, it's like discussing our problems and whether we need to address them through policy, government policy, right? It's basic politics. What I'm trying to illustrate here is this is how a debate about policy among mature people should escalate, right? You start off like you got to have basic facts. These are the basic facts, right? At the next level, you have to judge. Well, we have to have a dialogue. Is given these facts, do we have a problem? Is there a problem? If we agree that we have a problem, now we could debate whether there's a problem. That's what the debate should be, right? Is this a problem, right? If we judge that there is a problem, the next level is, well, is it bad enough that we have to address it through policy? Does our government have to address it? That's debatable. We should debate that. If we agree it needs to be addressed, if it's bad enough that it needs to be addressed, then the real debate comes in, which is how do we address it? What should the policy be to address it?
All these levels are really debatable, aren't they? All these levels are very, very debatable.
But that's where the debate has to be, right? My point is we're stuck at the bottom.
Yes.
And I want to illustrate this. Like everyone knows that, this is how it affects us in our personal lives. Thanksgiving dinner is difficult, right?
It's very much, yes.
Christmas Day is difficult if you live in a politically divided family, extended family.
That's right.
You hear on both sides like advice on how do you deal with Uncle Joe, right? You're liberal, Uncle Joe, or you're conservative Uncle Joe, you're Trump supporting Uncle Joe on Christmas Day when he starts talking about this or that, right? Because the reason the news outlets are giving us that advice is because they know there's going to be arguments and it's going to be about the facts. That's where we're arguing. If you go on social media, the arguments are always about the facts. Okay. This is one of the reasons I got off of Facebook. I got off of Facebook in fall of 2017 because I found I couldn't have a discussion with anyone from the side opposite mine because the debate got stuck and mired in trying to determine what were the real facts. And each side accused the other side of being crazy and out of touch with reality.
Yes.
Because we had not just different facts, but opposed facts, right? The laptop is real. The laptop is real. Here's the proof that it's real. This is the information from the laptop proving that it's real. No, it's Russian disinformation, right? Yeah. So we can't go beyond that. It breaks down. There's no way to get beyond that, right?
And that's because the narrative had already been established that it was Russian disinformation.
Right, exactly. So, on one side.
Yes.
Right. So there's no way to discuss this, it's ossified. You can't convince the other side that it's real, right? But we see it today. A good example over the last few years has been the whole issue of open borders, right? So for the first 3 years of Biden's presidency,
right?
I listen to NPR daily, and I've been listening since 1986. I also take in. Steve Bannon puts out his podcast 4 hours a day. At night I try to take in a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
Less so today, but back then I was taking in 2 hours. Steve Bannon had a stable of 4 reporters who would go down to the border and report from the border, or they go down to like the Darien Gap and report with cameras from the Darien Gap.
Right.
They were at the Darien Gap or at the entrance to the Darien Gap. They would say, well, it's so dangerous for these migrants to go through the Darien Gap that the United Nations has trucks set up, and they'd show the truck, right? And then they're giving out rape kits for the women because the women, there's a high likelihood they'll get raped, right? So you see, it's a United Nations truck. So clearly the United Nations is there, right?
Right.
Helping the migrants move toward the U.S. border, right?
Yep.
You also see how much risk the migrants are being put at because they have to give them rape kits, right? Basically saying, oh, we know you're going to get raped, so here, this might help you out when it happens. So, right? So that's what you're getting with Steve Bannon's show if you watch it, right? If you listen to NPR for 3 years, you had no idea that there was an open border and this was happening.
Amazing.
You'd see that these people were being bussed once they got through the gap.
Right.
You saw the buses pulling out, and there were shelters that were built. Right. You didn't know that. So that if you tried to discuss if you're a conservative, you try to discuss the open border problem with your liberal friends for the first 3 years of Biden's presidency, they don't know what you're talking about. There's no crisis. What are you talking about? They have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. So you see my point. This is why it's destructive. They're turning us into children bickering over things like basic facts. And the reason it's unconscionable is this bickering is the result of their lies. It's totally irresponsible and destructive on their part.
Wow.
To do this.
Okay. All right. Well, now we got some time here. Let's get into, you and I were talking about this, and a way to I guess the question is, can we trust AI? Can we trust some of those sources to determine the facts?
Well, yeah, I want to make the point that you and I had talked about offline first before I talk about the chatbots.
Okay.
The only way to deal with this and to inform yourself is to take in news from both sides.
Yes. Okay.
Identify the discrepancies and then do some research and use some judgment. Judgment is critical here, right? But do some research, go to primary sources if you can, right? And try to determine if the left and the right are disagreeing on a fact. Do research and try to see which side you think is lying about it. Okay. I know people are busy and you can't do that with every issue, but I would suggest if you just have certain issues you're really concerned about and you want to get to the truth, you could just do a little bit of research daily for a week, 2 weeks on that issue, and you'll have a much better idea looking at both sides and then going to primary sources.
That's really good advice, Michael. Because in my opinion, that's the hard part, is taking the time, to try and go through that process and to determine really what the facts are. That the tendency is to trust your trusted sources that you've trusted so much.
Right.
Yeah.
So, now in terms of the chatbots, I've used 3 of them extensively. So I've used Grok, GROK, ChatGPT, and Copilot. And I've found that I've actually tested them on certain issues, and I have found, like, in one instance, ChatGPT actually just made things up that weren't true. It didn't question my own assumptions, and it just made something up. And whereas Grok, I asked the same question, and Grok told me the truth. So, but the other thing that you'll find is there is a tremendous bias in many of the chatbots, because they're based upon gathering, massive amounts of information and analyzing it online. And if it's a news item, they're looking at the news that's been published. And what I have found that they can often have tremendous biases, and they will argue with you. You can try to challenge them. That's the other thing. I suggest people challenge chatbots, right? So what I'm getting at, I would never blindly accept that what a chatbot tells you is the truth. Just like with checking out the mainstream media, you have to challenge them. You have to go to other sources, but they will argue with you and try to convince you that you're wrong about something, or that what you're asserting is not true, right? And it's because in many ways they have an implicit bias because they're basing their views on the mass of reporting. So if if the mainstream media has 80% of the articles that they're analyzing, and 90% of the mainstream media has a liberal bias on this issue, that's what the chatbots are absorbing and processing.
Oh, okay, right? Okay.
So and they'll say, well, what you're saying is a right-wing conspiracy theory, but some people have asserted that, but there's no evidence, right? I can't think of an example right now, but I have had cases where I've challenged the chatbot successfully, right, with facts, and it's changed its mind. right? But for the most part, I would never blindly trust a chatbot. You can't do that. You have to treat the chatbots in a way, the way you treat a news outlet reporting. So
Okay.
when it comes
Okay.
to political issues, what I'm saying, right? Political
Uh-huh.
issues that are subject to bias, you've got to be careful with them.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, Michael, let's kind of. I like this. I like this slide. Let's kind of wrap things up
Okay.
around this slide, if we could.
I just had this in my talk for humor to close things off, but it's some I don't even remember who the cartoonist is, but they put out this cartoon that showed you've got the people, right, and it's a drought, right. The media is serving as a dam, right, with this holding back this nourishing water. That's the truth, right, and it's a desert, right, where the
Right.
people are, but the cracks are forming on the walls of that dam in the media. So this is basically, yeah, it says how long before, it's hard for me to read it
How
actually.
long before it bursts?
Burst. Okay. Yeah. So it's saying, the cracks are forming in the mainstream media because people are starting to wake up to the fact that they're lying and censoring information. So how long before the dam
Yeah.
bursts and we get the actual nourishing truth that we need? So
Very good. Very good. So Michael, let's wrap it up here. What's your basic recommendation to people in approaching then the news media?
Well, like I said, I feel that it's critical to take in news from both sides, and I really recommend people do that.
And that's so very hard. That's hard to do, isn't it? That's very
Right.
hard.
But if there are ways you can work it in, like if you're driving, that's often where I do it. If I'm driving, I'll flip to NPR so I can
Okay.
hear what they're saying. Right. It's easy to do that way. I'll listen to Catholic radio. I'm in Cincinnati. We have Catholic radio, and I'll flip on Catholic radio to Raymond Arroyo's show to hear what they're saying. Right. Um, but that's critical. Take in news because the other way it benefits you is you'll start to know whatever side you're on. If you take in news from the other side, you're going to hear what facts they're pushing, but you're going to know the mindset that your friends from the other side are going to be in. You're going to know how they're viewing an issue, and then you're going to be better prepared to discuss it with them. I don't want to say who, but over time I've been able to persuade two friends of mine to flip from Democrat to Republican. One of them took about 6 years, and the other took about 3 months. So, the other thing I want to say is you got to take in news from all sides, but also I think it's incumbent upon everyone to challenge each other with facts, to challenge people on the opposite side from you with facts, with information that says, look, you're not getting the whole story.
Yeah.
I think that's tremendously helpful to do that.
Yeah.
And if you can become a producer of information, it doesn't hurt. If you thought about starting a podcast, start the podcast. The more information, it's an information war, basically, and I feel like that's how it needs to be fought, by having more voices speak the truth,
Well, I think that's definitely a trend in our society today, is more voices being heard out there. And we're one of those. I like to think that we're one of those being heard out there that wasn't there before.
Right. I also want to say, Dale, the other thing I would tell people is not to follow the party line. Like I used to be a Democrat. I voted for Obama, and I eventually flipped to Republican.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been very critical about Donald Trump, about many things he's done. I actually disagree. I believe that both sides have formed ossified narratives that are untruthful, they don't give the complete truth about the war, the Gaza war, right? So those are issues where I break from the mainstream conservative view, and disagree with people who are on the side that I'm on currently. So I would challenge people, if you disagree with the line that your side is putting out, express that. Don't fall into line with a narrative you disagree with and think is untruthful.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Michael, you've given us a lot to think about, but I think you've provided some very, very useful insights into our media and how things are handled. So I think we can finally wrap it up here, Michael. And
okay.
I want to thank you for giving us your time, and we'll have you back again if you're willing to.
Okay.
So, all right.
I appreciate the opportunity, Dale. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael.
Okay.
Well, folks, that's a wrap. I hope you've enjoyed these segments with Michael on media bias. And like I said, I think we just may bring him back again, especially on some hot topics that are coming up in our society. So that's it for today. Dale Parrish, COS Today. Have a good day. That was interesting, now wasn't it, Ken?
Well, yeah, I think Michael has some. Obviously, he's spent years looking at this. He had some good advice. I think, I think it is. I don't know. I think we're going to see the same issues with AI, with everything going on. Is it a real video? Is it not a real video? I mean, all this stuff is going to just kind of coagulate. That's not a word I use often. I think it's just one of those things that I see problems there as well. And yeah, I mean, challenge it, come up with both sides and work it out. But I've said this a long time ago. You can't even get to the table. You haven't been able to get to the table with kids and have a discussion.
We just avoid. We just avoid talking.
You get to the point, you just stop talking. That's not good either. So maybe when we have him back, we'll have to have the next version as to how do you get people talking again.
Well, like I said in my interview with him, the hardest part is the time involved in listening to both sides, and he acknowledged that. But he was trying to suggest some ways that where you can work it in to your daily schedule, but it's still so very difficult, and you end up trusting a lot of the sources that you trust the most and that you've trusted for so long. His thing about Facebook, about him getting off of Facebook because of couldn't agree on facts with different. I experienced the same thing. I went through that period with Facebook where we just argued back and forth with people all across the country, people that I knew from the past, and I just got to the point where I just got tired. I got tired of arguing. We weren't resolving anything. We were just arguing. And
even Facebook tried its own hand at the facts, with their fact checkers, and who were the fact checkers? As it turned out, they were all sitting there with the bias that the same bias the media had. So that went wrong as well. I wish there was a little machine you could stick it in, and the fact checker would go bing, 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 and show you which one was right. But we don't quite have that. So I think a lot of times, Dale, we have to rely on. And again, this is an area I think for a lot of our problems boil down to the fact that if it's moral, if it's faith-based, I think a lot of people have that as a way to kind of navigate a little bit about truth because they rely on a faith, or they have a moral compass, so to speak, which helps, not in everything, but at least helps a lot of these other areas. And I think a lot of we had a discussion about that at one point not too long ago. I think a lot of that's coming back in a generation of men. People are coming back to that a little bit because they realize everything else has been so empty.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on. Ken, you want to talk about that QR code up there? Still
Sure.
want to talk
A
about
little
that?
2 cents about that QR code. That QR code basically is our support code. It's a way that you can take your camera out and take a shot of that QR code and put in your name and email address. Show us that you're a supporter, and you'll be put into a platform of people that that are showing their support. There's a lot of information there, a lot of contributor segments that we've gathered together, websites, some other interesting things, just places that you can go to see that what we've done over the past, as well as things that are coming up. And it's a simple procedure. So hit the QR code, take your smartphone out, and show us your support, as well as Marengo said. Continue, and I'll plug it for here because Marengo's voice was a little soft, but I mean, because another way of showing us your support is to go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, but most importantly, hit that notification bell so that you know when we're coming on.
Let's let him say that again. You can everybody turn your volume up a little bit now.
Rango Mike here, asking you to hit that like, subscribe, and especially that notification bell so you'll be reminded every time we go live. We really do appreciate your support. Now, back to our program.
Yeah, we'll get Marengo straightened out there and get him. I think maybe his volume knob was stuck. So
okay. Well, listen, our David Punt, our Dave's Daily Dose, he's on a camping trip right now. So, and he tells me they're camping in Washington, D.C. I find that very interesting. Yeah. So anyway, we don't have anything brand new from him, but I found this from a couple weeks ago, and I thought this would be kind of interesting. So let's just take a little minute here and listen to Dave's Daily Dose.
Are the Democrats getting the message that the message they're sending out is not a pleasant message to their voters? Normally, we would just look around the office and count noses, and most of those noses would be pinched shut, indicating that what they're doing smells bad. But that's not how Democrats operate, apparently. They have to take polls or call someone higher up or something. Super secret underground Substack imitation journalists on the Never Trumper site, The Bulwark, are reporting today that Hakeem Jeffries, #1 Democrat in the House, is telling his fellow Democrats to stop flying to El Salvador for plush vacations at the Hilton. Hakeem is denying he'd tell his fellow Democrats anything, and besides, they'd never do it. Never, never, never. Disobey me? Ha! This is Dave's Daily Dose on Broken Road Radio. I'm David Allen Punt. Meanwhile, he authorized one of his staffers, Christy Stephenson, to talk to the Daily Caller and say this is patently false and thinly sourced innuendo. As Leader Jeffries has repeatedly said, Christy went on, House Democrats will never stop fighting for the release of Mr. Abrego Garcia. Never, never, never. Hakeem, couldn't you say that yourself? Were you busy fighting crime or working on immigration legislation? Looking for cheaper flights to El Salvador? Meanwhile, the National Republican Campaign Committee said they'd be more than happy to pick up the plane tickets as long as Democrats would shoot video and take selfies of themselves with tattooed gang members behind bars, and maybe having drinks at the Hilton San Salvador, a 5-star resort where the last gang of 4 crime-fighting Democrats hung out in luxurious splendor. No word yet on where Maryland Senator Chrissy Van Holleran stayed, maybe the Motel 6 San Salvador, because he wanted to save taxpayers some money. 3 unnamed Senate aides told the Daily Caller that they believe Chrissy called the trip a codal, or congressional member delegation. So you and I paid for the airfare and hotel and the iced tea he shared with Garcia. Perhaps Democrats should write some legislation called illegal alien visitation so they could go more often. Maybe even include lunch, a little entertainment for the illegals, and a fruit basket marked courtesy U.S. taxpayers. I'm David Allen Punt.
Yeah, that's a good one. I especially enjoyed the fruit basket idea.
Yes. Now, of course, like I said, that's a few weeks old. The update is they did bring him back.
Yep.
And they've already slapped over 100 charges on him or something like that. Unbelievable.
Deeper than any of them thought. So, I mean, at this point, yeah. I mean, my whole argument. I mean, my whole argument, and I think a lot of the points of view on that were, if everybody and their brother gets a trial because they're charged with something, this could go on forever. And
that's they want that. Yeah.
The cost again is just outrageous. So
yeah.
Again, Dale, I know we've had this discussion before. To me, again, I look at two words: legal, illegal. If somebody's illegal, they really don't have the same constitutional rights that citizens have here, that are American citizens. It's easy. To me, it's cut and dry. If you're legal, you're legal. If you're illegal, you're illegal.
Yeah.
That's like going to your favorite fishing pond and you're illegal. You don't have a fishing license, but you're pulling out salmon left and right. You need to throw them back.
All right. Well, good fishing analogy there, folks. We'll
I tried. It was the best I could come up to at the moment.
All right. Good. Well, let's move on. And then I finally sat down with Larry Hudson, and we got another part here, another segment on George Washington. And I think we are, if I remember right, he said he's got one more segment to go on George Washington in his Meet the Founders series. And then we're moving on to Ben Franklin. So there'll be a ton of stuff on Ben Franklin too. But I think we're almost to the end on George Washington. And really, most of this has been his early life and the Revolutionary War. And so I don't know how much more Larry's going to squeeze into this final segment, but he's already notified me that he's ready for us to record that final segment on George Washington. So we'll have that as part of our next broadcast, probably. So, okay. So let's bring up Larry on this segment on George Washington, Meet the Founders. Well, everyone, again, Dale Parrish, COS Today host. We're going to resume our talk with Larry Hudson on General Washington. And we were just about getting ready on our last segment, which was segment 5. This will be 6. We were getting to the point of talking about Benedict Arnold. So I want to bring Larry back on, and let's pick it up from there. Okay, Larry.
Hello, Dale.
Hey. So Benedict Arnold.
Yes.
You mentioned him briefly at the end of the last segment. But he was instrumental in the defeat of the British at Saratoga.
Yes. And
who we just learned that Washington had assigned as a military commander of Philadelphia after the British departed. So, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So take it up from there then.
Okay. Well, you've got the one, Dale. While serving as, I think it was military commander or military governor, I'm not sure of the title, but Arnold got in trouble. He spent money wildly. He was living the life of luxury in a mansion, the mansion I think that General Howe had occupied. He was dashing around the Capitol in a fine carriage with attendants dressed in their vestry and special uniforms. And perhaps most importantly, he violated several state and military regulations that basically resulted in charges being referred to the Congress. And Arnold asked for an immediate court martial, which, of course, resulted in a reprimand from Washington himself. And additionally, Arnold's estranged wife had died, and he had married a young, I think she was 18 years old, daughter of a loyalist named Shippen, Peggy Shippen. And his young wife was known for her appetites and for being a high maintenance woman who was a loyalist like her father.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so what did Arnold do that was considered treasonous?
Well, a couple of things, actually. One sticks. When he was in Philadelphia, he made some secret overtures to the British about his unhappiness with the Continental Army and Washington. And eventually he leaked the details of a proposed invasion of Canada by the Americans. Treasonous in my view, but not the treason that we're going to know him for. And after his court martial, Washington, who still regarded him really as one of his very best commanders, but incapacitated in the sense that he had been wounded seriously at Saratoga and was unfit for duty, he assigned him as the commander of the critical fort at West Point. So he's in a defensive position there and not actively in the field. And it was during his tour here that Arnold actually reached out to the British, bartering for 20,000 pounds in return for giving over the fort to the British.
Wow. So, well, why would he do this? And how did he get caught doing this?
Well, several reasons, I think. To start with, he'd been passed over for promotion to the rank of Major General by Congress, and he'd threatened to resign. And I think it was Washington's personal persuasion that actually kept him from resigning, kept him on. Secondly, he'd been seriously wounded, as I mentioned, at the Battle of Saratoga, no longer fit for active duty. So he was, at loss there because being in the field was the love of his life, actually. And it was at this point that Washington placed him in command at Philadelphia as a military commander, and where he lived beyond his means, and he got into trouble financially. So he simply needed money, and the British were a means to that end.
Okay. All right. So he was mad over not getting promoted. He was in debt, needed money. And so he offered his services to the British. So how was he found out, and what happened afterwards?
Well, interesting twist of fate, I guess you would call it. Washington decided to pay a visit to Arnold and his young wife, Peggy, who I think had recently given birth to a baby boy. They were at West Point. He announced his intentions formally prior to the visit. But upon arriving at the fort, he found that she was there, but that Arnold wasn't. So while waiting for Arnold to return, she or an aide of Arnold's had said he was gone, but he would return. Washington found this at the very least disrespectful. He decided that he would just inspect the fort while he spent some time waiting. And what he found was a fort in appalling disrepair. In his view, Washington thought it would take months to make the necessary repairs to just to bring the fort up to standards. And he came away astonished, disillusioned, really, and very suspicious. And to make matters worse, Arnold had still not returned, and his wife, Peggy, had become hysterical, locked herself in her bedroom, and was shouting that her husband was gone forever. And when Washington came to her aid, she asked for him to come up. She even accused him of coming there to kill her baby. So, as you might suspect, Arnold was nowhere to found, and Washington was simply, I think the word that I remember was bewildered. He didn't know what to do.
I'll tell you, this sounds. I see you noted here. This sounds like something out of a novel.
yeah, I think I put that in my notes.
You did
a novel.
So I'll tell you, Washington really had some challenges as a commander in chief, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
He had some, not only fighting the war, but dealing with some of these officers that he had that were part of his command. Unbelievable, I tell you.
Unbelievable.
So what does he do?
Well, as maybe fortune, luck would have it, he receives, while he's still there at the fort, he receives papers delivered to him that were taken from a Major John Andre, who just happened to be Hillary Clinton's adjutant and his spy master. And these papers included details of the plot to hand over Fort West Point to the British.
I see. Okay.
Courier also delivers Washington just a bit later a message from Arnold. Washington Arnold hasn't returned. So Washington gets a message from Arnold wherein he revealed, and I'll quote, Arnold said a sense of injustice. He had incurred a sense of injustice that had been festering longer than his war wounds. And he asked no favors for himself, but he asked protection for Mrs. Arnold. Well, unbeknownst to Washington, Peggy Arnold had often entertained this very same John Andre while in Philadelphia. And letters between them indicated that she was well aware of what Arnold was plotting, and she even encouraged it. She was, after all, the daughter of a Tory. And Washington was unaware of all of this. And so he sent her and her baby safely back home to Philadelphia. He would not, however, extend the same courtesy to this Major Andre.
So Andre is executed, right? But even here, there's another story to be told. I guess, right?
Yeah, we have more story. Washington, he convened a board of senior officers, I think, to investigate the matter. They, of course, found Andre guilty of treason, that he ought to be considered a spy from the enemy, and that he ought to suffer the death penalty. And Washington now, of course, has been betrayed, feels betrayed, and he wholeheartedly concurs, and his date of execution is drawing near. Washington is going to have him executed immediately. So Andre appealed to Washington in a letter to be executed by a firing squad as a soldier, as opposed to being hanged as a spy, which that was the customary execution for spies, was hanging. Washington he didn't say yay or nay. He simply just didn't reply to the request, and Andre was hanged as a spy. And according to witnesses, he even placed the noose around his own neck, tightened it, and then said, and I've got the quote here, "I am reconciled to my death, but I detest the mode. I pray you to bear me witness that I meet my fate like a brave man."
Okay.
Chivalry.
Okay. So, okay, Andre is tried and executed. So, what happens to Benedict Arnold then?
Well, Arnold escaped on a British ship, leaving Andre there in the hands of the Americans. And after fleeing over to the British, he received a commission in the British Army. And he served actually in several engagements against the Americans. The sacrifice of Andre turned many loyalists in this country against Arnold, and his reputation was further tarnished when he led British forces in a raid against New London, Connecticut, where dozens of civilians were killed. And Washington reportedly authorized several kidnap plots to seize Arnold if they found him for execution, or even have him killed or shot on sight if the opportunity presented itself. Even some British regarded him with disdain because of his abandonment of Andre, and it earned him the scorn of many British army officers. Eventually, he returns to England, and after years of suffering from gout, I think it was, and some other health conditions, he died, I think at the age of about 60. And following his death, of course, his memory lived on in the land of his birth here, where his name became synonymous with the word traitor.
Yeah, yeah. Well, do you know, Larry? Do you know what happened with his wife and baby? Did
I'll have to go back and read. I can't say that I remember that anything happened to her of note, but I think if you just go online and search for Peggy Shippen, you'll probably find something.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that would probably be very interesting.
Yeah, it would be.
I don't know. Washington returned her to Philadelphia because he didn't know of her involvement. I don't think anything came of her. I know nothing came of her involvement with Arnold and his treachery and treason. But there may be something else that occurred because she was very young. I think she was probably only 20.
Yeah, she would have been in the early 20s probably by this time. Was the baby a girl or a boy? Do you know?
It was a boy.
It was a boy. So
yeah, and I did read something about him, and I've forgotten. I remember in reading about it because I was interested in knowing that also. Was it a girl or a boy? He always wanted a boy. His first wife couldn't give him a boy, and she died. They were estranged when she died, and I'm sure that there's something to be learned on this boy, what he grew up to be. Yeah. Had to live with his father's treason.
Right. That's what I wondered. Yeah. I guess the boy would have the last name of Arnold, wouldn't he?
Oh yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah. He would be.
Be interesting.
I'll find out. I'll let you know next time we talk. I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, anyway,
check on Piggy and Arnold's boy.
Yeah. So anyway, Benedict Arnold evidently got what he deserved in the end. So you mentioned earlier that Yorktown, Washington's last battle, and the victory that won us the war. Is that where we're going to head to next?
It is, Dale, and I know we're all ready for this. The Battle of Yorktown. Sometimes it's called the Siege of Yorktown. It's not the final battle of the war, but it was a decisive victory for the Continental Army led by Washington. But it wasn't without really, and I'll try to draw this out so people understand, the vital support that came from the French. Without the French, we would not have won that siege or that battle.
Okay.
Over Cornwallis and his British army. The defeat at Yorktown did lead the British to negotiate an end to the conflict, and eventually that led to the Treaty of Paris. And in this treaty, of course, the British finally acknowledged the independence and sovereignty of the 13 colonies, and subsequently the establishment of the United States.
Okay. So, well, of course, we said there's going to be one more segment here to wind this up, right?
Yeah. One more.
And I know you and I were chatting about this, that Washington, there's a great deal more history about Washington from this point on, from the end of the war on,
Yeah, great deal.
that we're not even going to get into. But of course, we haven't even gotten to his presidency or anything. So
Yeah, we had 8 years there, and
yeah.
and it was a very successful presidency. That is not without hiccups, but it was a very successful presidency. Factions hadn't really grown. The real trouble started really with John Adams and Thomas Jefferson.
Okay. All right. Well, very interesting, Larry. Great job. Great job. Thank you for doing this. And we'll look forward to the next segment on Washington, the next and final segment.
Segment on Washington and the Revolutionary War. Yeah.
And then we'll be getting into Ben Franklin, which is
Ben Franklin
will be another interesting one too. So
yeah, I'm reading a book right now called The Americanization of Ben Franklin.
Okay.
really an interesting take. Franklin isn't what we necessarily think him to be.
Is that oh boy. Okay, this ought to be good.
Well, it's one man's opinion, I suppose, that author, but it's interesting to look at it from his viewpoint.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Larry, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Dale.
Okay. Well, folks, that's the end of this segment with Larry Hudson, and we'll be looking forward to the next and final segment on George Washington. So hope you've all enjoyed this. I certainly have learned a lot. And so we got one more to go. So I want to say thank you to Larry, and thank you for tuning in, folks. Have a good evening. Larry does a great job on these. Very, very.
Yeah, meticulous and delves into the deepest of those details that make that story not only memorable but come alive.
And there's so many offshoots to this. Like, what did happen to Benedict Arnold's wife? What happened to his son?
Yeah.
Did his son go on to do anything? That could be interesting to delve into that a bit too. So very, very interesting. I hope our viewing audience agrees or enjoys these. I know they can get kind of drawn out, but Larry's just done a great job on this. Just done a great job.
Yeah, I'd say he's a great rabbit hunter because he finds all these little rabbit holes he's gone down.
Yes. All right. Well, can we? This is a little technical thing that we worked on at the last minute. I'd like to play the next episode of our COS Now. In other words, kind of what our national group is doing. Can we do that?
No, I don't think we're going to be able to play that tonight, not in its entirety.
We're not.
No,
okay.
Not in its entirety. It would be cut off, and I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, we won't do that. Okay, I understand. Well,
ran out of time. We'll double up on it.
We'll blame it on you and move on here. But yeah, that's a good idea. Next time we'll double up because we get one of these updates every week.
Yeah,
and that's a good idea. We'll just double up next time. All right. Well, let's start wrapping up things. And I want to mention on our next broadcast coming up June 16th, I think Brett Sturley is going to start on anti-Semitism. And at least he's given me every indication that he's going to be ready to do this. I hope he comes through for us. But obviously, this is a hot topic. And of course, in Convention of States, one of our core values is the Judeo-Christian founding. And so this anti-Semitism is obviously, right in that topic. So anti-Semitism with Brett Sturley on June 16th. And we'll have some other segments, maybe another Meet the Founders segment with Larry by then. So that's coming up on the 16th. And coming up on the 23rd is our roundtable, and that's going to be part 2 of Trump Restoring Common Sense. You know, in our last roundtable in April, we did the same topic, but Trump had put out in Restoring Common Sense, he had put out 10 objectives and 10 things that he wanted to address as far as restoring common sense in our country. We took 5 of them in our April roundtable, and we're going to take the other 5 here for the June roundtable. Have you picked the one you're going to do, Ken? Have you?
I believe I did. Yeah, I don't remember offhand what it was.
Yeah, I can't remember offhand what mine is either. But I think I'm going to be talking about the Green New Deal. I think that's the one that I picked out. So okay, that's coming up on the 23rd. Now, folks, just also remember now, anytime you have a comment or a question about our broadcast, feel free to drop us an email at raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. Drop us an email and we'll basically respond. We'll definitely respond to you. So, Ken, I want to, before we get into the final thing here, I want to play Maringo Mike one more time. Okay?
Yep.
And so everybody turn your volume up here a little bit.
Maringo Mike here, asking you to hit that like, subscribe, and especially that notification bell so you'll be reminded every time we go live. We really do appreciate your support. Now, back to our program.
Okay.
Dale, before we move into that last segment too, I want to mention too much really to put up on the screen, but Jerry Rowe has posted a number of great comments here regarding the COS application, you know, what it allows for amendment-wise, how we're using Article 5 to call a convention. He also gets into a pretty good segment here talking about Israel and some things that are interesting there. A book by John Spencer and Arsen Ostrovsky talking about why Israel's war against Hamas is necessary. So he's posted a number of things in the chat. So it's a Facebook chat. So I don't think our friends on YouTube can see it.
Okay.
But it's there, and maybe we can pull some of that up in some way and address it maybe in another broadcast. We'll see.
All right. Good.
Thanks, Jerry.
All right. Thanks, Jerry. Jerry's a longtime COS volunteer. Been involved, very much involved in the state of Indiana and nationally as far as that's concerned. So, Jerry's been a longtime volunteer. So, Ken, let's get into John Ackerman and Convention of States Basics. This is number 19. This is the one where we weren't able to attach the intro and closing. It's just him talking here. So this is the basic one. And this is about the myth about a Article 5 convention being a convention to rewrite the Constitution. And he busts that myth. So let's get in and let's let John do his thing here.
John Ackerman for Convention of States, Indiana, continuing the COS basics. And we've been having some fun lately, busting some myths. The next myth that I'm going to bust is the one that says the convention could rewrite the entire Constitution. Gloom and doom. The fact is, that's a myth. It's not true that the convention could rewrite the entire Constitution. There is no rewrite intended. Article 5 of the Constitution is very clear at this point. The only thing the convention can do is propose amendments. Propose amendments. they would still have to be ratified by 3/4 of the 50 states. Now, the goal of the Convention of States project is firm: holding an Article 5 convention to propose amendments to the United States Constitution. That's it, propose amendments. We do have 3 kinds of amendments in mind, and the convention will be limited to these 3 topics. Amendments that would curb the federal debt, restrain federal spending. Amendments that would limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. And amendments that would impose term limits on the judiciary, federal bureaucrats, and elected officials. That's it. Pretty simple. The convention is limited to these 3 purposes, and state legislatures will provide specific instructions to their delegates to adhere to these restrictions. Appropriate amendments could include a balanced budget amendment and term limits on Congress and federal judges. Those are just examples of what might happen. And so the myth that the convention could rewrite the entire Constitution, busted.
There you have it. Pretty simple. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I tell you, all sorts of technical issues tonight.
That's okay. And just an update, Jerry says he can post on YouTube also, so I'm going to ask him to do that. So our YouTube friends, whatever Jerry's been posting here that the only Facebook could see, hang on, it's coming.
All right. Good deal. Well, Ken, I think that's a wrap for us tonight. And we'll close out with Maringo Mike here. Another message, a separate message from Maringo Mike. But so I hope everyone's enjoyed our broadcast this evening, and look forward to being back with you again next Monday, 7 o'clock Eastern time every week. So everyone, have a good evening, and we will see you next week.
Marengo Mike here with a reminder that our work to raise the bar on making our federal government accountable to the people is only halfway done. We need to grow our grassroots army of citizens every day to fulfill the vision of our forefathers and keep our land free and prosperous. So, if you have never signed the petition to show your support, use that QR code and do that now. While you're there, why not kick it up a notch and volunteer for many of the positions available where your talents can make a difference as we march into a new year. Thank you, and God bless.